Welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piskor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
We're bringing back the weekly shoot. Jimmy, what is the week? What day is it, man?
12:29. Talk about being put on the spot early in the morning, Ed. Good Lord.
It's like you don't remember the format, James. Got a couple pieces of feedback that routinely come into the Kayfabe DMs, emails, chats, all that stuff. One is, got to bring back the weeklies, man. Here we are. Two,
I think I say that now and then.
a lot of people have been asking how they can contribute to the channel directly. And there's a lot of ways to do that. People have been sending us books. People have been certainly promoting the channel online. But we've put together a Patreon recently. And we've already put together, a pretty decent little group of Kayfabers who are contributing directly to the channel. Going to pin something to the chat right now, but got to thank everybody, and we're going to bring some real value to the patrons that are supporting us. If you've seen lately when we record our videos, we've been streaming our live recording session, and that's been mitigating the kayfabe effect for the people who watch, because they're getting a direct line on the stuff that we're talking about. And we are going to keep that relegated to our King Kayfabe patrons who are supporting the channel at that level, so that they could have access to us in that private chat. They could see the videos before anybody else sees them. Once again, we pinned it to the top of the chat there, so that you could join us. Because what's going to happen is, after this weekly shoot, we're going to take about a 10-minute break. Going to go set up in the other room, get all our books together. We're going to start up another stream, and that stream is going to be for the patrons who are supporting us, and they're going to be able to interact and see the books that we're talking about before anybody. Sometimes a week before, sometimes maybe months before, because there's always one video that's going to be in the queue, so that we can live our lives and have some travels, man. You've been to Hawaii recently. I've been to Japan recently. But we kept putting a video out every single day, brand new.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've enjoyed those live streams. All this stuff is somewhat experimental, at least in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was one that turned out to be really good.
Yeah.
Just for that little bit of back and forth and being able to get some input in between videos and things like that. I think it's a real good use of Patreon, based on, we've run Patreons ourselves, and I feel like it's a chance to kind of like, hey, if you want to put some questions out there, if you want to get a little bit more involved, that's a really good way to do it. And it allows us to kind of focus on it maybe a little bit more than if it's across everything. And there's always social media to post. I listened to a ton of wrestling podcasts, and one of the things they do, and I maybe should have brought this up before we came on, but they do hashtag the name of the show. So across social media, if you want to ask a question of JR, it's hashtag JR's barbecue or something. You should plug us now for that free plug. I was listening to that on the way over. But, that could be another way. But we do get a lot of this kind of input from people all over the place. The Patreon will give us a little bit more of a focus on, easier to keep up with, because it is still just a two-person operation. For people that wonder how we do this, that was one of the things we got a lot of positive feedback, is people watching those streams of how we do it. But it's still just us two. We didn't have an intern or anything to help with kind of sorting this stuff out. So hopefully the Patreon will be a way to kind of keep in a little better touch both ways, back and forth between us and our audience.
And as we continue to kind of build funds for the channel, the hope is that the production starts to increase, and that takes money, and that takes knowledge too. So if anybody knows, if there's a one-stop shop for all the best mixers, microphones, cameras for streaming, for recording video. A lot of people have criticisms. Why don't you guys have 4K cameras? Contribute to the Patreon, and over time, we'll be able to get a 4K camera.
Yeah, it's I don't know if baby step is appropriate, but we've added TikTok, so we're slowly building out. But again, two people, it does take time to do this, and it takes time away from other things. So you do kind of have to do it incrementally, but definitely it's something I'd like to see happen in 2023 is continue to upgrade equipment. And we have, we've been buying equipment, I think, since we started.
Sure.
Different lights and mics and
Gotta
things
get
like
new
that.
lights.
So
Got to get new lights pretty soon, man.
It's a pretty good luck with equipment.
Yeah.
That is funny with the lighting, is that bought those lights, I don't know, 2. Yeah, pretty early on. Talk about stuff that works, man. When it works, it always impresses me when something lasts for a while.
It is fascinating how we sort of jumped on board this YouTube train while after it's been kind of commodified in a way where you can simply go online and get all the basic materials, man. The lights came with like a backdrop rig, and the hope with that was to use the green screen and then take our image out and put cool backgrounds in. But green screens are finicky, it seems, man, and you got to have like all the wrinkles out of it, and we tried some things that just didn't work. And you guys should be thankful that you didn't see some of those efforts.
One of the things I'd like to figure out too is portability. Like,
Yeah.
I'd like to be able to run into comic shops and do a quick video, or to do live events out and about, stuff like that.
This little rig that we have right here seems pretty good. I took it to Japan, dude, and that's how I caught the Takashi Okazaki interview. I'm looking at our setup right here. Like, I'm not 1,000,000% happy with the light that's hitting our face with this here, but it's good for portability, and it's probably good when the camera's on one person. That's me thinking out loud, man. See, that's just process talk. But man, 2023 is upon us, a couple of days away, Jimmy, and I feel very, very hopeful about comics in the new year. But I also think that it's incumbent upon us, the fans of comics, and us as the creators of comics, to see this thing through. There's nobody looking out for your best interests. Certainly, the makers out there who are working for others, you got to take care of yourself, man. And just while I was out on my travels, reading about how a lot of people are working for publishers, not getting paid, and not knowing if others are getting paid, and that's everybody at the publisher or something like that. Like, we have to work together a lot more. My hope is that there are other networks of YouTube channels that sort of develop over the next year or two that we can all use to bring our books on by whenever we have some new stuff to promote, man. Because print is, come on now, man. Like, people are consuming this way more. I bet you we sold more copies of that Love and Rockets box set than any of the other places that Fantagraphics might have sent those box sets to.
Yeah, it's definitely a different world in comics. I grew up loving all the print coverage. Heck, we started with Wizard Magazine.
It's true.
I don't even know what an equivalent of that is anymore. I'm not sure there's anything left, from that time. But everything has changed in the last couple of years. The book market has taken over. We were talking before we started, and it's like, talking about the direct market now would be like talking about the newsstand in the 90s or something.
Yeah.
In terms of the shift. Whenever I was traveling, I go to comic shops and talk to comic shop owners all that I can. Got to talk to some in Hawaii. We have Comics Pro coming to Pittsburgh in late February, which is a professional group of comics retailers. And the thing that I've learned from talking to retailers since we started this channel, since we were doing store appearances and things, is we say comics retailers, and yes, there's a group, but man, they're a bunch of individual businessmen and women. Like, each one of them runs their shop differently. And I'm eager to just like continue those conversations, because they're always revealing.
Yeah.
It's always different than whatever I thought. And they're always different from one to the other. So that's one of those things that's coming up that I hope we get a chance to really bring some new voices into this conversation about comics and where they're at and how retail works, both for the retailers, but also for the makers. Because more and more, we did the doujinshi Japanese episode of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, not the last doujinshi episode we're going to be covering.
But looking at that, like, it really feels like we're going to see more and more of that in the American market, where it is self-publishing. Like, why would you go to these companies where the page rates aren't very much?
Yeah.
And then you own maybe nothing or a small piece. There are alternatives now that I think become more and more attractive as we move forward. And one of those things is, what's the bridge between the self-publisher and the comics retailer?
Yeah.
So, these are conversations I look forward to having this year and into the future, because I actually am very optimistic with where comics are. I think our industry is maybe not a great industry, but I do think like comics have never looked better. There's never been a bigger talent pool making comics. Like, in every way, comics they're unstoppable, and they have been forever. One of the books I want us to look at is an ad book from the 30s of comics ads. Once comics started doing advertising, they dominated the advertising landscape to the point that advertisers and traditional illustrators and designers hated comics because that's what people were responding to. So pretty soon they took over advertising.
Yeah.
Until you get your collapse in the 50s when it's like suddenly comics are the devil's, message or whatever. But
So are you
comics
saying
have always
are you
been
saying
great.
that are you saying that the Kayfabe hearings is a Madison Avenue conspiracy
I think it helped.
to bring back more elegant?
That's right. That's right.
Howard Chaykin design.
100%. I couldn't say it better. but I do think that comics have always been this unstoppable force because as an art form, as a language, they're phenomenal. And I mean, there's so much about comics that are better now than they've ever been. And what we've got to figure out is how do we continue to strengthen that from creator to consumer to reader.
Yeah, and I think what you said about the retailers, how they're each their own individual cottage business, I think that that applies to the cartoonist.
Yes.
Like that's what I mean. That's what we mean by the title. There is no comic industry. It's up to us. It's not up to Cartoonist Kayfabe. It's up to everybody who loves this medium to keep the thing going. Because if you are beholden to like the corporate sort of structures that exist within comics at the highest level down to distribution, it's a pretty old model. And when I was out in Japan, so was the editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics. And he didn't come back to the US for a long time. That's the editor-in-chief. So is he editing abroad? I don't know, but he wasn't in the States looking at books every 2 seconds. I could tell you that. And we gotta take the bull by the horns, and we gotta not make excuses. It's like there are holes, there are gaps. Those old dudes are operating using very old logic, and in each of those gaps is opportunity, and we have to adapt, or you die in as much as the single creator doesn't get to do his thing. Like, if you don't adapt, you don't get to prosper. But that doesn't mean that other people aren't going to. You know what I'm saying? Like, just putting this platform together with you, Jimmy, it's increased sales in comics by an exponential degree. Like, it became very, very clear that this was a smart road to go down, and perhaps maybe the best sort of added piece to my comics business and practice that I put together in like 10 years up to the point that we started the channel. So there are always these opportunities, and maybe it is you show some drawing techniques on TikTok for 30 seconds a day or something like that, and then you build up a big ass fan base. I just read an article this morning from a dude in town who had a couple 100,000. He's a chef and he makes pasta like a la carte here in Pittsburgh, and overnight he made a video that caught fire. He has over 1 million subscribers, and that's something that he's able to monetize. If it's shirts, if it's selling sauces that his restaurant manufactures, like he's got all these like little income streams that weren't even thought about sometime before.
Yeah, it's really bizarre, but we just have so many of those tools. The idea that a restaurant is or a chef is also selling like his branded stuff, like t-shirts and weird things. Like, imagine trying to explain that to Chef Boyardee 50 years ago. Like, they'd be like, what are you talking about? And it's such the norm now. And why shouldn't it be? You're putting your life into this stuff.
Yeah.
If somebody connects to that, of course they want to wear a shirt, or they want to be reminded of that stuff in a calendar or something. It's like you want to surround yourself with these things that really you love, that you connect with, that mean something to you. And those things are expressed in a lot of different ways. The main thing may be the chef, may be the food, but there's other elements that are like, what, we actually have a lot in common, is what you find with stuff. We see it all the time, I think, with Cartoonist Kayfabe, audience people, whether they're creators or readers, like tons of overlap exists outside of just the very specific, like, Street Angel from me to you, but then also like, oh yeah, we're also fans of the Hernandez brothers. Like we're fans of these same influences and these same other books, and it's pretty easy to kind of like continue to build that and to build that connection, and probably going to be more and more important going forward because of the nature of how many people are connected. Finding those people that you really resonate with.
Yeah.
And again, there's a million tools for this. Like, for all the we see a lot of negative feedback online. And I don't just mean like aimed at us or whatever, but just in general, you know, not even just within comics. You see it about when a new movie comes out or a book or anything. And I went to Barnes & Noble, little aside. Here's a comics adventure that I had this week. Barnes & Noble, I had some gift cards from Christmas, and they have 50% off hardcovers. I don't know if this is the first time they've done it or not, but like the 2 days after Christmas. So it's like, all right, let's go, you know, make these gift cards go as far as we can. So you get there and it's like, oh, this is a bookstore full of people browsing books and being excited about books, which is just awesome. I love that. They have giant manga section, right?
Yeah.
Find my Fist of the North Star Volume 7 there. And then they have like their Marvel and Image and everything else, like the Western graphic novels. And it was in this big U-shaped, like, I don't know how, 30 shelves or something, a large selection. I went to the Cranberry Barnes & Noble, just FYI for you because you have a close one. Then I was looking for stuff for my nephew who's 10, and he loved Dogman, but he's kind of outgrown that, you know. So it's like, all right, let me find some stuff, and I saw nothing. Like I'm like, oh man, no YA. But I'm looking around at the bookstore because I just love looking at all the book design. And guess what? I find the YA bookshelf section and another section of just graphic novels. The thing we were craving whenever Plain Jane's originally came out from Minx was like, this should be in a YA section. Look a little bit further, and there's an all ages section that's as big as the manga and mainstream section. I found books, comic books, Koyama books in sports section. I found stuff in travel, graphic novels, like just scattered throughout the store. It's incredible. I had no idea. I just don't go to Barnes & Noble. It's not convenient for me. What they have done, it's a whole, and it's similar to when I first started looking at webtoons. I remember looking at webtoons 5 years ago and just being like, there are millions of comics on here, and they don't really look like manga, and they don't look like anything I see in Wednesday stores. And there's like engagement. Like it's not just a bunch of cartoonists that are, you know, middle schoolers trying to put something online. It's like there are passionate fan bases on here, but totally different than anything I'd ever seen. That's what it felt like walking around the Barnes & Noble graphic novels. Publishers I'd never heard of. I saw one book. It was #1 on Webtoons, #1 New York Times bestseller. There are different avenues, people, for making comics and putting them in front of lots of readers.
Yeah, even years ago, whenever we went to that one Heroes Con where they brought some of the web cartoonists, man.
Yes.
And Kate Beaton was in that crowd. And then there was like Nedroid, which is like a potato character or something. And like 4 or 5 other people. Meredith Grand, Octopus Pie, she was there. And they had bigger lines than everybody in the entire convention. And we were like, oh, dude, I think we need to start making some web comics and shit. And you go to those websites and you see the networks of these websites and how they work and the engagement that like the most popular stuff has. You know, it's into the millions sometimes. And Webtoon, like, it's owned by Line. Line is the DM of choice for Asia. Everybody, like, if you go to Japan, you got to have Line to communicate with your friends that you make and stuff in Korea. And those are comics culture. Those are the comics cultures. That if you want to see a comics industry, a model for a comics industry, you go to Japan. Like I was there, like that one Sunday I was there. There were 3 comic conventions in Tokyo on that exact same day. There was Tokyo Comic Con for your like Marvel, almost exclusively Marvel now I think about it, but you're like your pop culture, mainstream type shit. There was Comitia, which is the independent doujinshi festival where people, it's like a SPX, except on fucking steroids. We're going to make a video about that. And then there was this other one that catered to more Western, and like they called it foreign comics, where it would be like French and Franco-Belgian and I guess maybe independent American stuff. 3 different festivals that commanded probably altogether, because it was the small doujinshi festival, altogether probably 100,000 plus people between those 3 in the hermit country that has, you know, half the population of the US, you know, so like just seeing the stuff that was going on out there was crazy. But I could also make the argument that Fist of the North Star, which was in Shonen Jump, is a comic for a 10-year-old.
You might be right. I bet you my nephew would love it.
Yeah.
But he doesn't get my collection of those.
No, man.
Maybe I should be buying 2 sets.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
But you know, my point of saying all that is just, if you're not happy with exactly where you are in comics, especially as a reader, there are a lot of options right now.
Yeah.
You know, look around. I mean, it's just because you do have access to Japanese, you do have access to Korean, you have access to European stuff.
You have
just didn't
access.
exist back
You have
when we were
access
kids.
to a fucking internet full of hundreds of millions, if not billions, of people. Choose your platform. You know, there's hundreds of millions of people on Instagram or something, and it has that swipe feature. You know, and it's caters to the square. Like there should be a resurgence of the Daily Strip. And you see the people who prosper who do it, like Simon Hanselman.
I think about that all the time.
With
I feel like
his pandemic joint. He
was,
did that
he was
daily,
teaching comics lessons
Yeah.
to makers out there and growing his audience.
gigantically.
Yes.
Super smart, man.
So I feel nothing but optimism towards this, but I do think it's challenging to make comics by themselves. Whenever you then add the component of like, okay, I got to make this work, I got to build my own business. You know, it's like challenge on challenge, but look at it as opportunity, because I mean the alternative is you let somebody else run those decisions and you see what we see. You know, these companies go out of business and they owe. I mean, think of the number of Christmases that are ruined because some company doesn't pay what they owe their creators.
Yeah.
You know, you just got to try real hard not to be in that position. And fortunately, I think that we do have a brighter future ahead in terms of what alternative options are available.
I think that we as peers are in a kind of a catbird seat in having a vision for how things change in a way, because we come up in a very weird time where the digital convergence like happened in our lifetimes, and we saw whole illustration careers evaporate from guys who just vehemently opposed to get a computer, to learn a computer, to figure the online part of how illustration transitioned, and in order to be sort of to be a Luddite at that level and maintain a career, you have to be in the 1% of illustrators. Like, I'm quite confident a guy like Robert Crumb never had to get a computer. You know what I'm saying?
You don't think he has an Adobe subscription?
Los Bros send their art to Fantagraphics for scanning and all that stuff. I bet you if you ask them, there's a little bit of nervousness in there when they send that art. But they do it because they don't fuck with it. But like, I know the Los Bros and you are not the Los Bros. You know what I'm saying? You got to figure that stuff out. So that was at the early stages of the net, where it was just kind of cool that you can digitize stuff, and instead of sending art, you could send like a zip disk or something. But times have changed even further, and we are like the illustrators who were around. I think of Mark Zingarelli, who did stuff in Weirdo, and illustrated a Joyce Brabner graphic novel or something. But he had almost like a full 30-year career before the computer becomes a thing. And he took, 6-7 months of hard practice, and he learned it and succeeded and built like a really, really good illustration career after that. And we are just in a very liquid time where there is so much opportunity. And I think one of the great fictions of art making or being an artist, a professional artist, is that when you're young and you're coming up, you assume that the artist has one income stream, which is their art. And that's just not the case, man. There's a million different ways that these like kind of incomes can come in, and a lot of different avenues. And one of the other things that I took from my experience out there in Japan is like a play like Studio Ghibli or any of the successful manga or anime, they skin that cat 4,000 ways. Like Studio Ghibli, you could buy 1 million tchotchkes. Like, the movie is the tree that all these other little limbs hang off of. And there's notebooks, there's toys, there's gachapons, there's the storyboard books, there's other art books, there's hoodies. Like, it's the McFarlane thing that in our first shoot interview, when he was like, I wanted like 4 pillars, man. You have, with the comic, you need toys, you need action figures, you need a movie and a cartoon. And that's the highest level. That's like the biggest moneymaker things. Like, in terms of like windfall, but there's a way to make a sustainable income doing art, but nobody's models will match. My model
That's
doesn't.
right, too.
My model doesn't match yours.
Yeah, you mentioned this on a recent episode where you talked about like your experience in art school and how like every professor had a different set of values, different ideas of like maybe how you succeed, the direction to go. And the thing is, like, you do want one answer, especially when you're starting out. You want to have a set of like, this is what I got to do, and if I do it, I succeed. And it doesn't exist that way. And in hindsight, I like that. It means I don't have to be like someone else. Like I feel less competition now than I ever have. And it's because the further along you get, the more you realize what you're doing is you're the only person doing it. And not just in terms of your style or your stories, but how you're making those ends meet,
Yeah.
And I like that part now. It allows for a tremendous amount of freedom. Try out all of these different tools and see which ones you like and which ones fit what you do. But in the beginning, it's very frustrating where it's like, I just want an answer.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we don't live in that world. I don't know that we have in a long time, where it's like, when I was a kid, it was Marvel, DC, and Archie.
Yeah.
That was about it. And I'm so thankful that that's not it anymore. But
Yeah.
it does require maybe a little bit more responsibility. You mentioned the catbird seat. You mentioned a lot there, Ed. One is, working digital or sort of transitioning through these tools. Like, I was looking at some of these books at Barnes & Noble that were coming out of, like, say, Webtoons, and you look at it, and it's almost this other art form. And I think it's because of tools. Like,
Yeah.
these are people that are starting, and it's not out of their notebooks with all their notes and thumbnails and things like that. And it's a whole different way to think, whenever you're working that differently in terms of process. So that part's pretty exciting. But the first time I met a pro and went to somebody's house, I was 16, and they told me a story about getting stiffed on a comics job for Christmas. And this is a dude that had a family.
Yeah.
So, like, before I ever sent real submission pages out, I was conscious of, like, don't count on these companies.
Yeah.
Don't count on these people. Don't put yourself in this vulnerable position.
Yeah.
If that paycheck's not there when it's supposed to be, like, don't go forward. Get that thing resolved. Because, I mean, again, age 16, like, this dude's like, F-bombing
Yeah.
in regards to his experience. And this was a working professional who had, like, the world's worst Christmas because some company goes belly up. And that's always been in my head.
Sure.
Like, as much as you can, don't be dependent on one of these places.
Yeah, I see a lot of stuff in the chat about how you get discovered, yada yada. Like with this internet and with building a like a social media platform for yourself. One of the sort of great I know what it feels like to make a hit. I know what that is. I've done it, and with Hip Hop Family Tree on Boing Boing. So it's before really social media was really catching on with like MySpace and all that stuff. They gave me an opportunity to put up a comic strip every week. And the tools for social media that we had were actually more powerful than they let them be now. So like on Facebook, I remember you could pop in a URL in the search field and there would be a drop down and it would show that URL and it would show how many times that website URL was shared or how many times it appears on people's profiles on Facebook. And I made it a practice whenever I put up a strip to see like how far it's reaching that way, because I didn't have access to the numbers through the website. And I didn't want to bug those people to like give me those numbers all the time. And there was a site called Topsy that got taken down that basically was a site like I described, like the Facebook thing, except it was for Twitter, and Twitter made that shit disappear or bought it or something like that. But what I would do every week, I would check those metrics, and when I did the Hip Hop Family Tree thing, and really felt good about it and excited, and I stayed away from the internet for like 5 hours that morning because I'm like, I just hope that people dig this because I want to do another one. After like 5 hours, I saw that it got like retweeted like 10,000 times. It got like 30,000 something like shares or something on Facebook, and everything else I put together was like 200, 600, maybe you get a 2,000 or something. But when it's like that, you're onto something. And with your Instagram, you put up something compelling it could reach a lot of eyeballs. It's being delivered to a lot of people, and if they respond quick enough, they send it out to a couple more people. And if those people respond, they send it out to a couple more people through the explore page, whatever. And it's very clear when you're onto something. It'll be very clear. But you can't just be treading water, doing the same mold, and expecting different results.
Yeah, it's I always caution people because I love the comics, but I don't want to give anybody the impression it's easy.
No.
You know, it's very hard to get over. It's hard to get over in any business.
Yeah.
Especially any competitive. This is an entertainment business. It's extremely competitive.
Right.
So, I don't want to give that false impression, but there are a lot of options, there are a lot of tools, and I would just encourage people, like, if you're unhappy with the spot you're in as a reader or a maker, look around, try other stuff, because at this point, you will not run out of new artists to try to read or new platforms to try to put your work on. There's just infinite now at this point for both makers and for readers. And I say, if you've gotten maybe a little stale where you're at, keep pushing, shake it up. It's a new year. Make a new resolution to kind of get out of that comfort zone or that area that you're not happy with, and look around and see what else is out there.
Yeah.
Because it's I see in the chat people talking Marvel DC. It's so much more than Marvel DC and Instagram. Like, again, just walking through Barnes and Noble, every single publisher has a graphic novel line at this point.
Yeah.
There's just, again, you could spend your entire life, I do, looking at this stuff. And you can still find gigantic, huge areas where it's like, I haven't even stepped foot. It's like a new continent.
Yeah.
So, if you're not happy with what you're seeing in your comics world, look around, because there are a lot of different comics worlds out there, and I bet you haven't explored all of them
Yeah.
yet.
Look around, try some different things, have some courage to do something that other people have not yet done in terms of these other platforms and things, like that. Lore Olympus, that's like the big webtoon.
That's the one I was looking at that was #1 New York Times bestseller, #1 webtoons. And while I'm standing there, a young woman and her mother came through, and passion as she was picking up one of those volumes, and her mother was well aware of it. Like, I imagine this is somebody that grew up reading this stuff, had a parent that encouraged them to read, and bought collections when they come out or whatever, but they were both aware of this book and super happy to see the new volume there on the stand. So I love those moments too, when you actually witness that enthusiasm.
Yeah, it's awesome. But she got into the game when webtoons was nothing. Like, it was a trifle, and certainly people within the comics industry was like, I'm gonna give my comics away for free on this platform. She didn't seem to do okay. Another caution is that whole, like, giving out free work, exposure, that kind of stuff. There is a point where that works, but I would say that you just have to do it to your own comfort level. Because, like, when I was doing that stuff over at Boing Boing, it took me 7 days to make a strip, and I think I got like $150 for that strip, for that week's work. It took 7 days to do. I was living off of savings with the hope that something would happen from it, man. But it was just a hope and a prayer, really, and it was luck. But you got to invest. You got to invest in yourself sometimes and take that shot. And maybe, I didn't get to see enough movies that year, and I didn't go to Kennywood enough times. And I sat down and I was just kept my head down. But now, shit is gravy.
Yeah, and again, I'm glad you say that, because I don't want to give the impression any of this stuff is easy or it just can happen. It is a lot of hard work and trial and error. The other thing that I'm hoping to do more of this year is get back to my local library, which is the other place where before the COVID shutdown, I had done like 3 of those ALA events in like a year span, because they have like the big annuals and then they have like smaller shows. And I was thinking about it on the ride over here, like, well, libraries aren't that big, and yet these events are huge. They're in gigantic convention halls and they're packed with people and every publisher's there. And I realized, like, oh, it's school libraries and university libraries and private libraries and public libraries. They're everywhere. Like, comics are now in places that they weren't when we were kids. They're not in 7-Elevens, okay? I'll give you that. I used to buy them at the gas station. But they weren't in libraries. And now I can walk to my local library and borrow from any of the libraries that it's connected to. Same with reading, like, digital through libraries. You can get these library cards for libraries in other states and access their digital holdings. So, I'd encourage people to look at your library holdings, because those are, again, another world of comics that are being kind of like targeted. And when I say comics, like that's an umbrella term for me. That's Peter Arno's single strips and Far Side. It's graphic novels. It's comic books. You know, the comic book, the graphic novel, those are formats in my world, but they're all comics.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, man. And the plan is to have a day worth of talking comics with you, Jimmy.
Yes.
We're going to cut these weekly shoots to about 30 minutes because it's kind of like us just getting into kind of a talkative state and engaging with you guys. But here's what's going to happen, people. I'm going to put up another quick link to the Patreon. And for the King Kayfabe Patreons, we are going to cut the stream for about 15 minutes to go set up in the other room, man. Get the microscope primed and prepped for this week's worth of comic book episodes. And if you contribute to the Patreon at the King Kayfabe level, because we have several levels of that Patreon, Jimmy. We got the first tier where you're getting a free video before everybody else gets it at like the $3 level. There's a $7 level where you're getting 3 videos before the rest of the public gets to see it. And then the top tier, you're getting the complete weekly stream of our recording session. So you're right there able to see the books that we're talking about, hear about the books that we're talking about, and engage with us at that level. The stream's going to be up.
Track the books down before Kayfabe effect takes effect.
That's what it's about, man. It's about mitigating that kayfabe
It puts me
effect
on the clock now.
Yeah, it does.
We've had a couple of books pop up where I'm like, hey man, we should kill this live stream because I don't have this book yet.
Yeah, but they also get, like, whenever we edit our episodes and upload them to YouTube, like, they're sitting there in a queue waiting to go live, and we're going to make those videos available to the patrons at either you're either getting 1, 3, or all 7 of our stream. Plus, in 2023, I'm thinking of doing like more like solo stuff of like simple shit, you know, like G.I. Joe comics, like random issues of G.I. Joe. Well, going in order, but I would save like an important one for like the main channel with you. But I like that comic. That series got me into the game, so it's fun just kind of going
Pencil
through.
me in for 24.
Yeah, no problem,
That's
man.
a big one for me.
There's another couple. There's a couple that you
sure
have to be a part of, man.
Absolutely.
But what I'm saying is, we're uploading a lot of videos, and the patrons get first dibs on those. So what happens is we're gonna cut the stream short. Now, if you don't contribute, nothing changes. You're still getting a fresh video every single day. Nothing changes. This is all just for people who want to support the channel and get in a little bit early so that they don't have to buy a $500 copy of this or that.
And let me just add, there's a lot of ways to support this channel.
Yeah.
Patreon's great. It's something new we're trying. Please give it a shot if you're inclined. But I mean, sharing the channel, sharing videos, when something pops up and you like it, share it to every channel that you've got. You know, put it out there on those platforms. It's how we grow. It's how we've grown up to this point. So that's a huge way to help us. We sell merch, you know, check out our spread shop. You know, you buy hats, t-shirts, coffee mugs, fanny packs, all kinds of stuff there. We have those links under all of our videos. That's a good one. And, you know, just talk comics with us. Hashtag Cartoonist Kayfabe whenever you've got recommendations and questions and things like that. And just spread the good word, man. Make more comics, read more comics.
Yeah, for sure, man. So, like I said, we're going to cut the stream short now. We're going to head in the other room. We're going to record this week's worth of episodes, but we're going to start up the private live stream to the top tier of our Patreon patrons. So if you guys are in the mix, come join us. And if not, we'll see you next week.